At what point does a mother say, enough, hurt me if you want to, but you will not touch my children? Today, Elizabeth Miss Liz Gagnon shares how she walked away from a 16-year abusive marriage, family betrayal, and the unthinkable, and still found the strength to rise and fight for others. Let's get started.
And my body shut down and I got paralyzed from my hips down. And I've lived through childhood abuse, abandonment, neglect, domestic abuse, mental abuse, psychological abuse. I was in a domestic violence relationship with my ex-husband for 16 years. My kids were sexually abused by their father. I found out that my mother and my ex-husband were having an affair. And when I went to go tell my dad was like, "Are you done being the troublemaker in the family?"
This is From Wounds to Wisdom with Barbie Moreno. Real talk, deep healing, and stories that turn pain into power. Let's dive in. Thank you, Miss Liz, for coming on From Wounds to Wisdom as an advocate for mental health and trauma recovery. We appreciate having you here.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So you have a few things that you have put together to help people go through this recovery process, including books. I know you're now doing a podcast. What made you get interested in helping people in this kind of recovery or this traumatic journey that they're going through?
I'm a survivor of traumatic abuse, so I speak from life experiences. I've used my story in order to help others share their stories as well. And that's what I do with my platforms and my books and all of that good stuff.
And do you mind going into what you are calling traumatic abuse?
I've lived through childhood abuse, abandonment, neglect, domestic abuse, mental abuse, psychological abuse. I've been through a lot of different types of abuse throughout my life. And became an advocate in 2017 when I shared my story for the first time in Sacred Hearts Rising anthology. And from there, I used my story in order to open doors and avenues and opportunities for others to share their stories as well.
What is your story?
My story is the tea. As you can see, for me, it's not the beverage, it's the transformation, empowerment, and action. We use the letters in order to tell the story. For me, I was given 3 words when I was the age of 4 by my Oma, and I was given the first cup of tea. And a lot of people will think, oh, it's a beverage, but it's not the beverage. It was what was in that cup that she gave me. And back then, she gave me the words recharge, reflect, and release. And I didn't understand those words until many years later. She knew that our family was very dysfunctional, full of addiction and abuse, and she knew I would have to take care of myself and find that inner voice within me. And that's what the inner cup is, right? Is how do we serve? How do we help others by being that example, by speaking up and finding our voices?
So was Oma alcoholic or abusive to her family?
No, my Oma that gave me the cup of tea, she was a survivor of Holocaust. She came to Canada. She was her and her twin brother were the only survivors of their family. The rest were all they didn't make it. They were in the encampments and that. So when she came to Canada, the first thing she did for safety was have a cup of tea.
Okay.
So she wanted to share that tea with me. She knew as a little girl that there was something special about me that she could see that the cup would give me the strength to carry on.
As a survivor of Holocaust, do you know how she showed up in the world afterwards? Like, obviously, when there's a family that has alcoholism, abuse, and things like that, we try to trace back where does it come from, and so what is the story behind that?
That was more on my father's side,
Hmm.
so not on my Oma side. My Oma was my from my mom's side.
Hmm.
Alcoholism, I believe, on my father's side, it ran for generations. It was just back then, that's what you did, right? Is you drank and smoked cigarettes and partied and had family gatherings and then it just turned into people could not handle their liquor and
Hmm.
then it turned into alcoholism.
Mm. And then where did the abuse come in?
Back in those decades, right? It was you are my wife, you will obey, you will follow rules, children will respect their elders, don't talk back, don't speak, uh, be seen but not heard. So a lot of it came from the generations and generational dysfunction, right? That goes way back into the 1700s.
And so your Oma was on your mom's side. So was your mom a relatively quote unquote normal person?
No, no. She got married at 15 and had me and was married to my father for many years. They got divorced and they reconnected and got together again. But he was very abusive with her, a lot of physical abuse and mental abuse and stuff like that. So
What do you think allowed that situation to continue? When people are abused, they're not the victims, but they often allow the situation, right? So do you have any like understanding of where that comes from?
I think it's back in those days we were told to obey, right? That word obey was almost implanted into women and lack of education.
Mhm.
Back then, a lot of women were getting married off, or their parents were signing them off because they had lack of responsibility, right? So push it on to the next person and that. So a lot of child marriages were committed and incest and stuff like that. So a lot of dysfunction right back in those days.
And so for a woman to leave those situations, I think that we forget because a lot of us nowadays are like, well, why wouldn't they just leave, right?
In 2025, people are still, why don't you leave? Why did you put up with that? Unless you live it, you do not understand it. If their child was going to be taken from them, or if the family was going to turn against them, were they going to be isolated? I was in a domestic violence relationship with my ex-husband for 16 years, and a lot of it was done behind closed doors and at nighttime. So the family did not see the abuse. So for
Right.
them to hear about the abuse today, they're like, well, we never seen it. Well, no, because they do it when there's nobody around. That's the whole point of the abuse is
Right.
do not be seen, right?
Right. And for you in that situation for 16 years, what was your mindset that kept you there?
I think it was because I was abused as a child. I was just scared. I
Yeah.
was that little girl that never got to grow up, right? When I
Hmm.
was told at a young age that I would be nothing, I was garbage. You're the family secret. We can do whatever we want with you. I don't want any more fear. You've
Right.
been fear all this time, and the body just says, you know what? Just behave. Just stay. Just stay.
I understand that 100%. We often will stay with the uncomfortable because we know what to expect, right? So how do you, after 16 years, how did you get out of it?
I found out that my kids were being hurt, and that was it. And it was the scariest thing in my life, but it was the best thing in my life as well.
Do you mind sharing what was going on with your children?
My kids were sexually abused by their father.
Mm.
And they came out. Um, my husband was also drugging me. We found out later from doctors, lots of tests, lots of things. There was a lot of things that started to add up after the fact came out.
Mm.
My oldest was the one that broke the silence and came out, and from there we just left. And
Well, good for you for leaving because, like you said, it's disheartening how many women will put up. I understand what you're saying because I put up with a lot of abuse because I was abused. But the moment I had my daughter, I was like, absolutely not. I am not letting anything happen to this child. I will protect her with my life. And I had to change my way of being to make sure that she didn't endure what I endured.
well, oftentimes that person will become the abuser as well, right?
Right, right.
Because they're so broken, so they don't know healthy as well. So then they become the broken parent as well, right?
Hmm.
Um, and we judge, but we
Hmm.
don't understand, right?
So you left. How did you leave? Did you just like pick up and leave in the middle of the night? Like, how'd you get out of it?
No, my situation was really a really confusing one. My parents supported my ex-husband. They bailed him out of jail after finding out what he had done. I found out that my mother and my ex-husband were having an affair.
Oh,
Uh,
geez.
yeah, it's there's a long story and a lot of trauma. And I had a meeting with my father, and I said, like, I had told my ex-husband, like, you have until Friday to tell my dad that you and my mom are doing this. And when I went to go tell my dad was like, "Are you done being the troublemaker in the family?" Like,
Oh,
and that was my last straw. I was just like, you know what? In 2 weeks, I'm gone. You're never going to see me again. I'm never coming home. And that's it. But my husband had made me sign papers of custody of my two older children. And he had to be the one to bring me to my new location, or he was going to charge me with kidnapping. But my journey didn't end there, Barbie. I got back into working, getting on my own, taking care of the kids. And then my body just finally had enough of all of the trauma from all of the years. And my body shut down. And I
Mhm.
got paralyzed from my hips down. And uh, then I had to reach out for help. And the only people I knew how to ask for help was the broken people.
Mhm.
And when I reached out, I was told, figure it out on your own. You left us.
Mm.
So then I reached out to Children's Aid Society and found homes for my children. I got to pick the homes. I stayed in contact with my kids. So
And that's hard to do as a mother to say, I literally cannot provide for you what you need.
yeah, it
You know,
was the hardest thing I ever did. People would find out that he was beating on me. So the neighbors were starting to report, and that's why then it was pick up and leave, you know. My children had asked me, Mom, can we stay where we are? We love
Mhm.
you, but can we stay? And that took me 2.5 months, Barbie, to actually sign over and say, I have to do what's right for my child. But mom was always just a little town over. Mom was at the birthday parties. Mom was at the graduation. I was there. I
Right.
just wasn't there full time.
And the interesting thing, like as you're saying that, it reminds me of so many men who that's like their role, right? They don't take care of the kids like day to day, and they show up for like the basketball games, they show up for their graduation, but they don't take care of them day to day, and nobody gives them a hard time.
Right?
They're just excited that they show up. Like they actually get
Yeah.
kudos for showing up. Nobody says to them, "Well, you abandoned your kids." They're just like, good job. Like you actually showed up for your kids. It's just such a different view
Yeah.
for what happens to a mother versus what we expect from a father.
Yeah, it's okay for the father to do it, but how dare the mom do it, right?
Exactly. Such a double standard.
And my children they always had the option that if they needed a respite or anything, they could come and stay with mom. They
Yeah.
could come and stay for a month or two, or, things would happen in the foster home and they would just need a break and they wanted mom, right?
But out of curiosity, you said you had to sign over your two older kids, right?
I was signing separation papers.
Hmm.
Even to this day, the courts don't know how the heck he got this paper. But he actually made me sign custody over of my two older children.
So
My
what is
yeah,
it like for them?
well, we went to court and I got custody back of my kids.
Good.
It took 14 court cases to get them back.
So you were taking care of them, yet he was collecting child support, and yet he had the legal rights to them.
Yep.
Sounds like a shit show.
So, yeah, so if I
Yeah.
wanted to leave without letting him know where I was going or anything, he could at any time charge me with kidnapping.
The affair with your mother is probably more uncommon than most things, which is just absolutely crazy too. But so you had turned your journey into something your Oma taught you. Talk to me about how you're there and what you feel like your journey is now.
The tea came
Hmm.
alive in 2015. So once I left my ex-husband, I made friends for the first time. So I wanted to celebrate strong women that were in my life. So we had a tea party in my house, and one of the ladies that was there, she just loved the way I set it up. Can we do this in the community? I said, I don't know. Can we try? Like, so then we started in 2016. We started hosting events, and I wanted to give thanks to all the services that had helped me overcome in my journey, like domestic violence shelters and services for sexual abuse as a child and stuff like that. So we raised money for them and we had speakers. And then in 2019, I became the Sacred Hearts Rising Leaders for Change. My speakers are already at my tea parties in the community. Bring them
Okay.
to the table. And that's why my podcast, I don't consider it a podcast. I consider it a serving and hosting place where people can come and share their stories, their services, their programs, organizations, stuff like that, right? Just have
So they
that,
can find resources.
right? And just
Mhm.
get that story out there.
When you share your story, the shame goes away.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And was it hard? Yeah. Is it still hard? Absolutely. There are days where my voice shakes when I share my story because
Mhm.
the trauma kicks in, the triggers kick in.
And I could feel that energy when you first came on, which is kind of why like I wanted to ease into it. But it's a vulnerable place. And, not everybody needs to hear your story. Brene Brown says that. She's like, you don't just give your story to everybody, right? People have to earn it. They don't need to know every single thing about you, mostly because people are very judgmental.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Well,
they
it
don't
goes right
understand.
back to that not understanding, right? You're
Hmm.
gonna judge what you don't understand.
Hmm.
Whether it's relationships, whether it's children, and our stories are not for everyone. And that's why
Right.
I'm very selective on where I share my story and who I share it with,
Yeah.
because it's not for everyone. And I tell that to everybody. I don't want to be everyone's cup of tea.
Yeah. I'm grateful that you're sharing your story with us. So how are you showing up in the world today?
So yeah, it's Miss Liz's Tea Time podcast, but when my guests come to the house, it's like you're coming to my house and having a cup of tea. Like, what
Yeah.
kind of cookies do you want? Would you like a cucumber sandwich? Would you like a egg salad sandwich? Tell me
Yeah.
what you like.
Yes, all of the above.
Right? But
It's
with that,
lunchtime.
right? But you want people to feel welcome on your platform. You don't want them to feel like a number. You don't want them to feel like, okay, well, you're just content.
Yes.
So you
Yeah.
want them to be welcome. My podcast has been running for 6 years. I shut it down last year in December when we first started talking, Barbie, and then something kept telling me, Liz, you have to come back. You have to come back.
Yeah.
I took 8 months off. And I only started back in August, and I'm doing 84 shows this year. So, you know,
It's a lot.
obviously a lot of people like the way that I serve the tea. So
Yeah, I love that. And I don't think a lot of people understand how time consuming and energy consuming a podcast is with almost no financial reward. You do it for the love of helping other people, right? Like there's very few people who are actually making a living doing a podcast. Most of us are doing it because we want to share and help and give tools and offer support and all of these various different things. So taking it off for 8 months is absolutely understandable because it's literally like I would say 50% of my week is consumed by podcast stuff and it's not an income producer. So I have to remember, that my family still needs to eat.
yeah.
So tell us about, so it's TEE for anybody who's listening. So we want to be very clear about that. Tell us about outside of the podcast that you have. I know that you're writing books, that you have a lot to offer.
I started my reading journey when I was about 9 years old, but my first published book came out in 2017 with the Sacred Hearts Rising series. I wrote in all four of those books, and I wrote different chapters in anthologies. For people that don't know what anthologies are, they're mini little chapters of multiple stories from different authors.
Right.
I've written in a couple of books where I regret writing in those books because the people did not have the meaning behind their books. They were
Hmm.
just writing a book because they could write a book. And
Right.
we got to really stop that. It's just like podcasting. Everybody's podcasting, but if your heart and purpose is not in it, don't do it,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I agree
Um,
100%.
because there's a lot of work that goes into podcasting. I'm a one-person team, so I do like all the marketing and sending out, reaching out, because I'm a strong person that believes that reaching out and just asking somebody, if you see a story and it really resonates with you, reach out and say, would you like to be a guest?
Yeah.
And you might open up a door of a lot of different opportunities that you were not even expecting to open. And that's what
Mhm.
has happened to me. Children's organization, advocates. And I just reached out and said, hey, and then I became the peace ambassador and I worked with 60 countries because a lot of this is worldwide, right?
Right. And I find, because I interview people all over the world too, and I find that it's crazy how in all over the world we have so many similarities trying to deal with the pain and the trauma and all of those various different things. So you have the books that you co-authored with, and now you're doing your own.
Yeah, I wrote my own books in 2023 and they're
Mhm.
called the TEA. Like for the TEA was teaching educational awareness, transformation and power action. There's many words we can use, but you can also save a life by just 3 words. You go
Right.
into the schools and you start asking, what is your T? Trouble, example, abuse.
Mm.
You want to really listen to that kid, you really want to listen to that person because they're giving you an insight of what their life is.
Mm.
And the T is time travel, the past, the present, and the future. And
Mhm.
all I've done is this year, and we've changed the words to transcend, embrace, envision. And it means exactly the same as teaching, education, awareness.
Right.
My ex-husband tried to take me out many times, and I think that's why my family, Barbie, is so relentless against me because I keep getting up.
Yeah, they're like
I
the
keep,
cat
they're
with
like,
nine lives.
stay down, like, and
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
no,
And you have a purpose in the world because of it. Yeah. What
absolutely.
what does Miss Liz's life look like in the future? What's your goals?
My goals is to have my own stage, to open up and to meet all of my guests. I've interviewed over 450 guests and I'd like to meet them face to face. But my goal is I have my drop shipping store that I'm trying to open.
So talk about your store because people are saying like drop ship. What? So I know you have a store, but talk about your store.
My store has over 100 products, but we're working on the invoicing and processing, and I don't know how to process the product,
Well, maybe
right?
somebody who's listening can help you with that.
Absolutely. Yeah. If anybody knows how, like I'm all for help.
What is it that they can buy from your store?
Fashion, candles, journals, furniture, throw blankets, and pillows. So
Right.
I'm working on a lot of advocacy for men stories as well.
And I do always have to remember to remind myself that my son needs as much support, love, protection as my daughter needs, right? Because we're in society taught basically like the boys are fine, like, and by the way, like my son is completely fine. He lives in his own little fantasy world and he's happy as can be. But it doesn't mean that he doesn't need the guidance, the love, the protection, and everything so that he can grow up to be a good person who honors everybody, including women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only
So,
problem I have with being a mom of a son is I have to be mom and dad, you know?
and I would say even there's married, there's women who have the father around and they don't let the father be the father too. That was one thing I had to do in my marriage was stop trying to control everything and let my husband be a father. And he's a
Yeah.
great father. He's a fantastic father. But I can say that in the very beginning, I wanted to be the person that my children went to, and I wanted to be that place, that safe place for them. And I feel like there was a time where I really did shut that door so that he couldn't be, mostly because of my past, I wanted to be the protector and I wanted to make sure nothing happened to my children.
Well, it's like you said, Barbie, it's the pattern, right?
Yeah,
Maybe the men that were in our lives were not protectors.
they weren't. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So
So you don't trust them.
why are we gonna let our husbands or our spouses be
Right.
protectors when we didn't have that?
Hmm.
So it's that cycle that we went through, right? That
Hmm.
we play
Yeah.
and we say, nope.
I still see majority of the men as sexual predators because not to be, judgmental, not all of them are, but there is still a very large percentage of male versus female who have dealt with a lot of trauma in their past and child abuse and sexual abuse that was never healed, who, that is the way that they were taught through those abuses that you show attention.
I was scared, Barbie, having a son.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. 100%.
I was scared because I was like, I just created another predator.
Hmm.
That was what I thought. And
Hmm.
I regretted that thought for many years with my son
Yeah.
because my son is the closest one to me.
Yeah.
He protects me a lot. I'm the one that's supposed to be the one watching over him, but he's watching over me.
And I think it is like something that you can fix. It's something within your control. Wrapping up, always like to ask for one tool that people can walk away with today that they can implement easily.
The thing that I have to offer is tea. And tea is not my tea, it's your tea. Serve yourself. Be who you want to be. Don't let anybody tell you you can't do it, you can't get out of it. You can. It's
Mm.
scary, but you can do it. Just be the tea.
So make it your own T. What does your T stand for? What does your E stand for? What does your A stand for? Or your double E, whatever it is, make it your own.
Absolutely. And
Love
you'd be
that.
surprised some of the teas that are being served in today's world. Mission is just to serve tea and make a difference. And write your story, share your story. That doesn't mean it has to be in a book, guys.
Hmm.
You can write it on a piece of paper, you can
Hmm.
burn it, you can rip it, you can do it, but release your
Hmm.
story onto paper and pen. I'm telling you, it's going to make a difference. And not everybody needs to see that story.
Right. Not
You
everybody
do,
needs to write a book, like you said. Yeah.
but you do.
Yeah. Tell me how people can find you.
They can find me on my website at www.misslizstea.com or misslizstea.com. The T is Miss MISSLIZTEE.com. That is where the drop shipping story is as well. You'll see that when you go to that site, it says that it's under construction. On Miss Liz's Tea Time, you can see all of the podcast interviews. And if you want to know more, you can check out Amazon on my Author Central and see the books that I've written and have on there.
Love that. And we will put all of that in the description. And we definitely appreciate you opening up yourself to the questions and to the journey and to share so that I know somebody will hear you and it will make a difference in somebody's life. That's always the way it works.
Absolutely. One story at a time, one tea at a time makes a difference.
Absolutely. Thank you. If this story spoke to you, let's keep the healing going. Visit barbiemoreno.com for my online course, Awakening Your Worth and Healing Energy sessions, one-on-one coaching, and your free healing guide. Your next step is waiting.